Hey guys, this is Are You Ready For It? Today's May 29, 2025, 3:27 a.m. Central Time. So I made a community post last night, kind of late, asked if you guys wanted to hear about this tariff situation in a video. A couple of you responded, most of you were asleep. I have time early this morning to do a video, so I'm going to do it. This is going to be a huge economic blow to Trump's agenda, 100%. Trump has 10 days to reverse tariffs, according to the U.S. Court of International Trade that made a ruling last night or evening, however you want to look at it. They're based out of Manhattan, 3 judges. This actually, first off, we're talking about reversing basically all tariffs except for specific goods, based on what I researched. And I wrote in this document everything, like the bullet points of what I wanted to go over. So we're going to just go over this document. Specific tariffs like on steel and automotive parts, stuff like that are going to stick. But these universal type things, 10%, stuff like that I'll get into, reversed. Yeah, so it's going to be a huge hit. All markets around the world, from here to Japan to Europe, all blew up and exploded in a very positive way when this ruling came out. So it should be interesting to see what the Dow opens at today and where it goes. But beside the point, I wasn't sure who even took this up and had sued the Trump administration to get to the U.S. Court of International Trade. But there was a lawsuit in Florida last week that basically had to do with this, that judge punted it to the U.S. Court of International Trade. But he had made a ruling that he agreed with the Trump administration. Now, apparently he didn't put much in writing because he did punt it, which I don't understand why or how courts do these types of things. So regardless, moving on. The order halts Trump's 30% tariffs on China, his 25% tariffs on some goods imported from Mexico and Canada, and the 10% universal tariffs on most goods coming into the United States. The ruling gave the White House 10 days to complete the process of halting the tariffs. The immediate higher court, I did not know, would be a federal circuit court. But it could go straight to SCOTUS, obviously. If they decide to petition SCOTUS, SCOTUS could say, no, we're going to leave it to the circuit, go through the circuit courts first, and blah, 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 and go through the process, which could take time. So it'll all be how the administration decides to do this. They said, basically, that this unelected bureaucrats on this court, which is funny because Trump actually confirmed one of the judges, can't make foreign policy and all this stuff, blah, blah, blah. And I'll go into the Constitution, too, where it talks about Congress. But beside the point, that they shouldn't be making foreign policy decisions and have anything to do with trade and all this stuff. Well, that's fine, but they haven't said they're going to appeal it. Of course they're going to appeal it. Depending on where they appeal it, we'll see how it goes. There were 11 states and a few small businesses that sued Trump, which is basically what this lawsuit was. Oregon and other attorney generals from Arizona, Colorado, Connecticut, Delaware, Illinois, Maine, Minnesota, Nevada, New Mexico, New York, and Vermont specifically challenged 4 of Trump's executive orders since April that have added fluctuating tariffs on most imports from China, Mexico, Canada, and 10% retaliatory tariffs on most all other goods imported from other countries to the U.S. The judges said that the law that he used, the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, quote, does not authorize worldwide and retaliatory, can't even read my own words, tariffs. And that because of the Constitution expresses allocation of the tariff power to Congress, we do not read the IEEPA to delegate an unbound tariff authority to the president. End quote. Well, here's the deal with that whole situation. First off, the IEEPA is a much longer law. I looked it up in U.S. code. It is very long and obnoxious, but the very beginning of it is basically indicates exactly what all of it's talking about. It has to do with emergency powers, like you're enacting an emergency as the president of the United States, which allows you to do certain things. But there's a lot of fact-finding that has to be justified to Congress and otherwise in order to use the IEEPA to do anything regarding tariffs, which is something Trump skipped. Now, it does not authorize worldwide and retaliatory tariffs. It does not. That particular law has nothing to do with that. So why Trump used this instead of using a different law to do trade agreements is questionable. So I kind of agree with these courts based on what Trump decided to do, because Trump declared a national emergency on fentanyl earlier this year to justify the tariffs on Canada and Mexico, saying they were necessary to elicit action from those countries to curb the flow of deadly opioid. He later ordered the United States trade deficits with several countries amount to a national emergency as well. So the first one makes sense, okay, that he could use the IEEPA for, because he could potentially consider this a national emergency based on all the numbers of people dying, the amount of drugs that were clocked on DHS and everywhere, of how much they were getting at these ports and people, and just catching people in between. I think would absolutely justify that national emergency to exist, and would also allow tariffs to happen on Canada and Mexico due to it. However, the later ordered U.S. trade deficits with several countries as a national emergency. Why he did that, I don't know, because there's a specific law that has to do with trade that would have allowed him to actually deal with that situation, meaning the rest of the fucking world, differently. I don't know why he decided to go the national emergency route regarding trade deficits, other than trying to put something into like direct law somehow. I don't know. I don't see the benefit of it. And obviously the downfall was doing that. Both emergencies declared under the 1977 International Emergency Economic Powers Act, i.e. PPA, which Trump administration argued gives the president broad power over how respond, including through actions on imports to the United States. So here's the deal. Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act of 1962 enables the president to impose tariffs if imports threaten national security following a thorough investigation. Okay? These are the three laws that he could have used and used. That one he did not use because it was amended by the law he used. If that makes sense. Section 301 of the Trade Act of 1974. Don't know why he did not use this specifically. Allows the president to impose retaliatory tariffs to counteract unfair foreign trade practices. Don't know why he bypassed the Trade Act of 1974 for the rest of the world and just deal with Mexico and Canada regarding the emergency one. And then the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, IEEPA, grants the president authority to regulate commerce during national emergencies involving foreign threats, requiring a formal declaration. So I don't know why Trump did what he did in the route he did, other than someone from the retarded Treasury Department who's a lawyer, or the DOJ lawyers or whatever was like, let's just run these two things as an emergency situation. And maybe they got some sort of authority under the IEEPA that he wouldn't have gotten for the rest of the world had he used Section 301 of the Trade Act of 1974. I don't know. But I do know that IEEPA came after, obviously, the Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act of 1962, which enables exactly what that says, but it's a thorough investigation. So that continued on to the IEEPA, and he has to, and he's required to, involve Congress about national emergencies and having to do anything with regulating commerce, trades, or tariffs or otherwise. So, which he didn't do. I mean, I know that for a fact. He did not involve Congress in this at all. It was unilateral. And SCOTUS has actually made a couple rulings on this, and they have a specific terminology that I did not stick in this. I can't remember. It doesn't matter. That basically is as Congress has given up its, or maybe not given up, but given more authority to the executive branch regarding tariffs. They have not given it up 100%. And SCOTUS affirmed that in a couple of cases they did. One was like U.S. versus Belmont and stuff like that, which basically said that the president can do things unilaterally, but has to have basically a very solid justification for it and keep Congress involved. Trump has not done anything with Congress regarding this, and the law he used requires him to involve Congress, or at least keep them up to date on what he's doing. And it seems like he just kind of goes with the wind of how he feels about tariffs and stuff with these other countries. And that's literally the case. It's like if someone pisses him off, he's like, oh, I'm going to put tariffs on cell phones coming out of China. So, but for those of you who have said, and there was one person that said something on my community post yesterday, Congress has the full authority to deal with tariffs. It's under the Constitution. I have my little Constitution book in front of me here. It's under Article 1, Section 8, and it says it's not just domestic stuff, which is what someone indicated in my post. So it says, the Congress shall have the power to lay and collect taxes, duties, imposts, and excises to pay the debts and provide for the common defense and general welfare of the United States. But all the duties, imposts, and excises shall be uniform throughout the United States. Also to borrow money on the credit of the United States. Also to regulate commerce with foreign nations and among several states and with Indian tribes. And then it goes on to talk about the rule of naturalization, uniform laws of bankruptcy, basically minting coins, blah, blah, blah. Shit about established post offices. God, how they're renaming post offices all fucking day long in Congress. It's really obnoxious. I get notifications in my email and stuff. Post office fucking sucks. I won't even get into the USPS, but I mean, stop naming their shit, and why don't you start penalizing them for fucking up their jobs? Beside the point, so Trump administration is going to have to appeal this, obviously, and they will. Now, I guarantee they're going to appeal it to SCOTUS, and whether SCOTUS punts it to the federal circuit system is a whole other deal, so we'll have to see how this goes. But regardless, I highly doubt, even if SCOTUS took this up, that it's going to be doing it in the next 10 days. I have no idea, but I doubt it. And to be honest with you, based on how Trump did his stuff, with his emergency, declarations, I agree with the U.S. Court of International Trade for one, and that was the global decisions outside of Mexico and Canada. I agree with International Trade, Court of International Trade, because it doesn't. Just because he creates an emergency and he considers something an emergency regarding the deficit of the United States with certain countries like China, for example, and the European Union, doesn't make it an emergency. Okay? Even though that's what his lawyers are basically going to argue. Because they're going to look at basically the last 40, 50 years and say, well, how can you say this is an emergency today when it wasn't for the last 40 years? Like, they're going to have to prove a lot of shit in court for the global tariffs. Now, the U.S. Court of International Trade should have left the one that had to do with Mexico and Canada alone, because that could absolutely be justified under that law that he used as a national emergency, like I said, because of all the numbers we have with fentanyl crossing the borders, period. So, and they could have even, but Trump didn't do it. He could have lumped in China with that too, because that's where it's coming from. But he didn't do that. He just did the Canada-Mexico emergency for the emergency of fentanyl. So that should have stayed or stuck or had some clause to it. But the rest of the world, the retaliatory tariffs of the 10% and negotiating with China and the 30% on them and all this stuff, none of that stuff fits into this law that I read. None of it fits into the law. I read the law the way the U.S. Court of International Trade did. So why he did not use the very obvious direct law that literally was that summarizes, which is what I summarized below, that literally says, okay, based on my summary, Section 301 of the Trade Act of 1974 allows the president to impose retaliatory tariffs to counteract unfair foreign trade practices. Why didn't he use that for the rest of the world? I don't understand. And that is something that if I was on SCOTUS, I'd fucking ask, because they can ask all kinds of stuff. Judges in regular courts can't go out of the scope of what they're talking about, but, you know, justices can. I'd be like, why is it that you decided to make a national emergency about the deficit between countries when in the last 40 years it hasn't been an emergency? All of a sudden it's emergency, and you have this 1974 act that you could have used to regulate foreign trade. What was the idea? Whose idea was that? Who was like, oh, we should just put these two in the same fucking category because of what reasoning? What reasoning? I don't get it. So he really, I think Trump fucked himself. I think he hardcore fucked himself with that, with the global tariffs, using that, the IEEPA law that came around. I don't understand why he didn't use the 1974 Act. But, like I said, there could be some legal stance, more clause into the IEEPA law, making a national emergency that gives him more authority or power or, you know, whatever it would be to justify certain things rather than the 1974 Act. But by using the IEEPA, like I said before, you have to involve Congress. There has to be fact-finding. And he hasn't done any of that. So, and I'll end it with this. As a small business owner who gets things overseas to create her items because the United States does not provide them, and if they did provide them, I wouldn't be going overseas, I'm kind of okay with this, this fucking ruling at the moment. But it is going to destroy what we've created. I don't see how countries wouldn't be walking away from, you know, Trump at this point, like India and stuff, or even China has come around, like say, oh, fuck you, your courts told you to go to hell, so we're telling you to go to hell, and we're going back to the old days. I don't know how Trump stands his ground with other countries now that this happened, and I think he's to be at fault for the global tariffs. The Mexico-Canada could have withstood the IEEPA law, I believe, for sure, because there's fact findings already there. But yeah, the retaliatory is not in that law. Sorry, Trump. This is Are You Ready For It? Take care, guys. Have a great day.